Hello, everyone. Thank you for um, acclimating to my abrupt change here this week. This should be the only time I do this. Um, yeah, something came up for me on Thursday, so I really appreciate it. So, what I was going to do today is we've already gone through the Black Legend. I'm going to try. I can't make promises though on prior recordings. Something went awry, and I'm having a hard time um, getting the recording to be able to post it. But I believe that I have it fixed, like for today's and from here on after. Okay. So let's see here. Sorry. And so I'm going ahead and get everyone's name down to give you credit for being here. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share the page. And there are two things that we've yet to cover. All right. And one of them here is on Latino self-identification as seen from the colonial foundations when primary sources from that time depicted the Native Americans and depicted the Spaniards under certain stereotypical images and under certain philosophical assumptions that we should not just take for granted. That's for sure. But to give you a little history on it, right? Recall that the two stereotypes that Native Americans had right from the get-go, from the jurists of Spain, and the jurists were like the educated lawyers and interpreters of the law, etc., and tried to write legal justifications for going to war with the Aztec, etc. One was that they were ovejas mansas. They were meek sheep. They were the fancy term they used as prelapsarian innocence. They were like Adam and Eve, who did not know that they were naked before the fall because they were innocent like children. And so you have that view, and with that, right, came a level of condescension and paternalism that Spain was like a father figure who was going to teach the proper ways of civilization to these indigenous people. And it started right off the bat, not only under the work of Bartolome de las Casas, his brief history of the destruction of the Indies became like a national bestseller, international bestseller. Um, but also through the very writings of Columbus's son and Columbus and his son as well, depicting the natives as such. And then the other one, of course, was famous under a guy named Sepulveda, and who argued before the crown, and he argued that they were demonic, that they were unknowingly being led by demons and the devil himself, right? Like through their, especially through human sacrifice as involved in their religion. And so, therefore, they had a right to declare holy or just war against these barbaric natives and to dispossess them of their land and even take them as virtual slaves through the repartimiento system for the government and the encomienda system for the conquerors, for the conquistadores. All right. And so this goes along for a little bit. And but it didn't take long after the famous conquest of the 1520s in Mexico and 1530s in Peru in South America that you had people like Garcilaso de la Vega, who was called the Inca. That was his Spanish nickname because of his love for his mother's Incan family heritage and ancestry. But what I put in here, right, is that he was equally proud. He was very proud of his Spanish blood as well. He utilized that Spanish blood to get the best of education, to travel, to have a nobleman's allowance. And so he lived the lifestyle of a well-to-do Spaniard. Um, and he was also particularly, as you'll see in here, was particularly proud of being Catholic Christian. Okay. And so he even goes so far as saying that that the Incans were led by a demonic entity that led them astray to a pagan religion. But he doesn't stop there, right? He doesn't stop there. Then he begins bragging on their civilization. He contends, right, that there was almost no coercive hand needed as a deterrent for good behavior. He said that a lot of people just wanting to have a good reputation, have honor connected to themselves and to their families, and not wanting to be dishonored or ostracized. That people often try to apply what Jesus would call the golden rule of treating others as you would want them to treat you. He contends that there wasn't much need for a police force, not much criminal activity. He says that there wasn't a whole lot of envy going on because you almost have a pre-Marxist setup. Uh, plots are allotted by need to families, depending on not just their connection to the Incan emperor, but also to their size and to how much land they thought was necessary for them to subsist. The basic necessities were granted to the common people, and they had access to irrigation for their crops, and they were to stay on their own feet from that point thereafter, and take care of themselves, their own family plot. And they were taught a trade. Oftentimes, it was connected to, in addition to farming, it was connected as an artisan to clothing, okay, with wool in particular. Um, but at any rate, everyone kind of did his thing, he said, and he's very, very proud of such. You could very much tell when you read it. I'm getting this from, you could get the English translation online, but the Spanish is Hispanic American literature in Spanish. And but at any rate, it's quite eloquent and it's quite uh, impressed by the Incans, very proud of his mother's family. So how is this, right? How is it that they're unknowingly led by the devil? They're either like ch innocent children or they're unknowingly demonic. Coming from that milieu comes the Incan, and he does not do such. I say that he gives a big clue to such through a guy named Pedro Serrano. It seems like a divergent, just like left turn in his writings. But at any rate, he mentions a guy named Pedro Serrano and another Spaniard who became shipwrecked and lost on an island just off of South America. And he said that the conditions were um, quite primitive and quite difficult for them to meet their basic needs. They got so desperate they were eating turtles and shellfish, etc. They were collecting rainwater with the turtle shells, and they were having a hard time at first just surviving. And they're supposedly going to be on this island for a total of 7 years. And in it, right, you get this kind of the folklore that was popular in the writings of the early modern European writers. Is he says that his body hair grew out to such that it sprouted so that it looked like an animal's pelt, and he began to look like an actual animal more than a human as he grew his beard out and his bodily hair, etc. Right? And I think you know where I'm going with this. They're going to contend that this was symbolic, that he stopped speaking. For the first 4 of the 7 years, he was by himself, and he almost lost momentarily uh, his use of language and his ability to articulate. And of course, that's symbolic, right? Once again, he's devolving to the level down to the level of an animal, of a beast. They literally use that term in Spanish, not only an animal but a beast. And so, at any rate, they when they see each other, for instance, and when they're rescued, the people that look upon their visage are taken aback, so much so by their appearance that they do take them to be some type of wild beast or demon, according to this narrative. And of course, what they began to do to show that they are men and that they are civilized and that they have the capacity to reason and have an eternal soul, they cite the Apostles' Creed from the Catholic Church as proof that they are Spaniards. So at any rate, right, they get rescued, and Pedro Serrano makes it back to Europe. The other fellow unfortunately died en route. Um, but he makes it back to Europe, and he has this great speaking tour that he goes on, like I guess, kind of like the movie Castaway. Um, and so it becomes like a big hit back in Europe. So kind of like, perhaps like with Lord of the Flies, it's this idea, right, that of environmental determinism, and not environmental in the sense of sociology, right, where your environment are your peers, your environment are your socializers who teach you right from wrong, and other human beings and other human interactions as explained as your environment. But here, no, it's literal, like your actual ecosystem, the actual environment, physical environment around you, dictates very strongly your level of civilization. And so hence, right, wild jungles, deserts, and other untamed ecosystems make animals of men. And as you might be familiar with Lord of the Flies, right, they start off trying to have law and order, these kids who are marooned on an island. And but when all is said and done, right, they've devolved down to a very bestial level. And I think there's a lot of parallels in that book with fascism, like Nazi Germany. But at any rate, they go wild, right? And these kids end up killing one another. And so, yeah, that type of environmental determinism, it doesn't weigh much in academia anymore. But that was popular. And the Inca Garcilaso de la Vega was right in the midst of that and caught up in it. So at any rate, I think you know where I'm going with this, right? He said he's pretty much saying, that um, the Inca, they, as any person, have humanity. And in having humanity, they have the capacity, as the Greeks would say, to reason, right? Like any human being should and ought and does. And so they called it natural reason, that you don't have to be Catholic Christian. You could be an adherent to any religion or no religion whatsoever, and you could still have the capacity to rationally think up of a good government, of a well-ordered society, of a well-ordered moral order to follow, and have people get along with one another well, et cetera, et cetera. And so, in fact, he says that the Inca were ripe and ready for the missions because with the missions, right, there was a lot of sharing of things. There was a lot of egalitarianism, everyone put on equal footing, a lot of cooperation and altruism, putting others ahead of your own needs. And he said they were ready for that because they lived that way to begin with before Christianity even came to them. And so, but he says, right, they're also fighting the raw nature of South America. And so what began to symbolize the raw nature of South America were the pampas, the hills and mountains. Okay. And so you have a little bit later a guy named Sarmiento, and he writes about a caudillo. A caudillo, right, was, as I put here, an unofficial local leader of men, usually by way of charisma and access to resources. Okay. And he went by the name Facundo Quiroga, and he had a big following of especially indigenous people who lived on horseback um, in the Pampas region of Argentina. And he said there was kind of a glory to it. There was something romantic about it, no doubt. But he said it also was very backward, very shameful. It was very primal and primitive. And he said the Facundos of the world they're great to put in a book and describe and as an escape, an escape experience and reading about them, but society should not follow them. That instead, right, it should follow the ultimate progress of the human spirit. It should the rudiments of a savage life versus from the dark forests versus the reason and science and the quote modern spirit of the city. Okay. So that was Sarmiento. And he was saying that the best thing for Argentina and the Pampas is to be is to be cultivated, is to be have neighborhoods and cities and adjacent villages and civilization be constructed in the midst of it, and have Europeans. In particular, he was enamored with the French, perhaps because of the Enlightenment. But at any rate, that in particular French people, educated people, should come to Argentina and bring it up to speed, et cetera, et cetera. So at any rate, going back to kind of the theme of this write-up, right, is just that I'm just saying it's really more informative than it is argumentative, this one. But I'm just kind of contending, right, that it's important to know these foundational premises, these beginning assumptions, to understand the history of the Latinos' self-identity. Okay. And so there is now a growing tolerance in Europe, contending under the scholastic movement of the Catholic Church, saying that all human beings are capable of reason. All human beings can be intelligent, can be brilliant, and come up with great, wonderful things, and so forth, including the proper way to live, morally. But, right, their environment needs to be amenable to their development, that they should be in an urbanized, modernized environment, and taken out of the jungle, taken out of the pampas, taken out of the desert, etc., right? And where they could have city and all its accoutrements, like libraries and schools, etc. All right. So I thought that was interesting, reading the Inca Garcilaso de la Vega. And there you have Sarmiento and Facundo. I put in St. Thomas Aquinas because he was the most well known, connected to the idea of all human beings having natural reason, not just Roman Catholics. Okay. And as you could guess, though, right, is they believe that through reason, the Incans, the Aztec, and others could know the basics not only of morality, of right and wrong, but even the basics of a proper approach to God, right? But the mysteries of the Catholic Church could not come by reason alone. That those mysteries of the Catholic Church are super rational. They're beyond reason, and they must be revealed to them. So the whole idea of the Trinity, of the gospel, of Christ dying for sins and so forth, right? They said that had to be revealed to them. It's not their fault. But of course they should assimilate. All right. So any questions or comments on that? Make sure I have all your names. Right. All right. I think I do. So at any rate, so moving on, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I'm going to share the other one that we've yet to cover that I'll place up there. And notice some of these I'm not putting as an assignment. I'm putting merely just as something to look at with for the test, okay, for the upcoming test. So on this one is pretty simple thesis, is that even though the colonial relationship was one-sided between the Spaniards and the Native Americans, that a mixture of cultures, what they call syncretism, borrowing, taking and borrowing from one another, culturally and institutionally and behaviorally, that it happened nevertheless, and that Latinos ought to be proud of such, that they have an indigenous heritage just as they have a Spanish heritage. Okay. So I start off by saying, okay, yes, I concede that it was very one-sided. And in some cases, right, the literal mixture or miscegenation, right, the physical blend of indigenous and Spanish did sometimes result in the first generation from the 15 teens to the 1530s uh, through rape, unfortunately. Um, but from there, right, you have the new laws of Carlos I, ending the encomienda system, or at least trying to. You have the laws of ordinances of discovery by his son, Felipe II, and he's the famous one of the Spanish Armada. And Philip or Felipe II, he in his ordinance of discovery, he said, "No more holy war. We're no longer to treat them as demonic brutes. We are to coexist with them, and they're to be not coerced in subjugation, in labor, nor in religion." And so they sent missionaries. And in some cases, the missionaries developed quite a reputation for allowing syncretism to happen. For instance, right, the Jesuits, known as the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, they went to Arizona, they went to parts of Mexico, they went to parts of Florida. They were very, very accommodating religiously. But even the Franciscans, who were seen to be like more a much like more hardcore denomination or order within the Catholic fold, even the Franciscans in Mexico, I try to write here and convince that they were quite accommodating. So whether it was trying to convince the Aztec people that their religions were one and the same, there's just different names to different deities, but the same common themes that could be found, which was pretty extraordinary. Um, you have the notion of sin. You have the notion of confession and penance amongst the Aztec and their religion. You have a good son of the creator God and an evil twin. You have the good son sacrificing his life for humanity and rising from death. It's incredible some of the parallels. And so the Franciscans focused on the similarities, right? And trying to convince the Aztec that they weren't really changing or abandoning their religion. They were just adding, they were crossing their T's and dotting their I's, right? They were perfecting their current religion, not replacing it with the proper names and the proper stories, etc., of Christ and the saints, etc., and the angels. All right. Um, the verbiage when they had their first communion and other sacraments, they likened it to different orders of warriorhood, which well, of course they were getting from the Aztec. They allowed the sacrament of reconciliation twice a year only, because that's what the Aztec wanted. In some cases, they did not want to verbally articulate all their sins, and so they were allowed to write them down. Um, they wanted mass said in Nahuatl as opposed to Castilian Spanish, and they got their way on that as well. And so, there were lots of concessions that were made for this being such a so-called, one-way street, right? With the Spaniards just taking control of them. So you find that in religion. And of course, what better example of that do you have with the Virgin Mary, right? And her alleged appearance in 1531 to Juan Diego. And so, and you have the famous story of the tilma or the cloak that he had, and it has that symbol that is on the symbol of a lot of Mexican paraphernalia of her standing on the serpent and the moon, etc. You have that there, and of course, where did he claim that she appeared? He is at the statue of Tonantzin. their chief goddess. Okay, and so just interesting parallels. And then, of course, you have the incredible, and this is difficult to, it's very difficult to prove and also disprove, because the writings were written down as interpretations to codex or codices pictures that, you can't prove or disprove that they had the proper interpretation, right? They depended upon young Aztec noble young men, who were supposedly well versed in the pictographs of their books, to give the proper stories of the accounts, etc., right? So we're relying upon you know, um, their skill and knowledge, their honesty, uh, versus the desire to accommodate their new Catholic leaders. But at any rate, they say from one of the codexes that there was a man who took on the name Quetzalcoatl of the feathered serpent, the good twin, in the 600s in Toyon, Mexico, or Tula, and he was tricked and committed a very high crime into committing a high crime in their society, and he had to flee, and he was deposed as their prince. And the sources contend that he said after a certain number of bundles, remember that's 52 years of common um, mixture of the three, of a pictograph, a number, and a phonetic sound, that you could come up with as far as combos. After a certain number of 52-year bundles in the year one read, that he was going to come back, and he was going to be light-skinned and bearded and clad in gold, and he'd come for his revenge, and he'd come to rule over them. And that, if that story is true, it ended up happening to be the incredible coincidence of the year 1519, when the Spanish conquistadors arrived, and they were lighter skinned and bearded. They were wearing copper that looked like gold, and you have a lot of literature from the indigenous as well as from the Spanish of the psychological edge that gave them. So at any rate, yeah, so you have it in religion, this syncretism, right? You have it also in literature. So at that time, right, back in Spain, you had a large number of writings that hit on common kind of neo. Um, it was. This is difficult for me to understand. It's not that I'm trying to condescend to tell you. It's difficult for me to understand as I'm reading this in Spanish. But at any rate, they with this movement, this Baroque movement, is oftentimes the the um the flowery writing. Okay, very a lot of verbiage. Okay, a very long, drawn out sentences with lots and lots of metaphors, similes, and adjectives, etc., right? A lot of them were noted classical Greek and Roman mythology. Okay. So if someone was, destined to fall in love, and that love was unrequited from the man or woman, and it was not, returned to the person who was madly in love, that person was Dido. That person was, Calypso, or someone who had her heart broken in the old Greek mythology. So, lots of allusions to Greco-Roman gods and goddesses and stories, right? And then of course you had some of their themes for sure. Hubris or arrogance, resulting in the protagonist being greatly humbled or broken. Greek tragedy. A lot of the writings, the short stories, and the poems seem to have been on kind of, like a sad song, or a tragic movie, okay, or play. And but also they kept alive chivalry from the medieval time period, and noblesse oblige, right? The nobleman's obligation to take care of those who could not take care of themselves. Unrequited love was huge in the medieval time period as well. So there were some continuations of medieval themes, but the style, at least, was very almost pagan to a lot of Catholics at that time. Very Greco-Roman, classical. So at any rate, you have these writings that are coming out in Spain, and lo and behold, right, they began writing along those lines here in the Americas. And so the first person I think of is Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. She was a nun in Mexico, and she was well born with quote noble blood, um, and she was taken from her parents and kind of brought to a like a mentor of sort. And so she was anomalous. She was out of the ordinary, and that being a female, she was greatly introduced to learning, to Greco-Roman classical books and in literature and philosophy, etc. So she was brilliant and well read. And so she wrote in the Baroque style, just as the Spaniards were back in Spain, and she wrote in that same style. She also had a tendency to change her rhythmic patterns in her poetry. So instead of like like oh goodness, ABAB, right? Um, uh, whereby the first and third lines rhyme, the second and fourth lines rhyme, etc. If you were to do that on her poems, it would look chaotic. It'd be like ABA, BBA, BAB as you go down each stanza. And so that was part of the Baroque part, though, was the breaking from rhythmic uh, tradition and so forth. There's lots of allusions to lost love and tragedy. There's lots of allusions to different gods and goddesses of the Greco-Roman world found in her writings. And so the Catholic Church finally, though, she got enough attention and fame, whereby the Catholic Church mandated that as an American and also as a woman, that she stop producing this poetry. And she refused, very famously, and stood her ground. And it's quite a story. But at any rate, she and as I mentioned in the prior write-up, the Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, he um, he also blended and used Baroque style in his writings, and was very proud of the indigenous Inca of his mother's lineage. And so that people like, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz and the Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, they were forcing Spain to take a look at Americans and to see that they were contributing quite a bit intellectually, thematically, artistically to this Baroque movement. Okay. Then you have folklore, right? And like typical of the folklore, right? You have the Day of the Dead. So with the Day of the Dead, right, that largely is Aztec. But the Catholic Church kind of capitulated and conceded and said, you know what, we can make this work. We can make this work. And so, of course, they contended that with their notions of purgatory, that those in such that they could come and visit the dead, or the living, I'm sorry. And then, of course, they have it in the 2 days, right? October 31st and November 1st, the Day of the Innocents, which are children who had died. And so the children are allowed to come from heaven, and from those who were not baptized, right? They believe they were in oh, my Catholic theology. It's another place. It's heavenly, but it's not heaven. But at any rate, the so you have accommodations with the Day of the Dead that the Catholics made toward the Aztec to celebrate that day, and it being such a big part of Mexico. And then they say it's difficult to discern uh, to what extent it's indigenous and to what extent it is European or Spanish with certain folklore and so forth, right? Like La Llorona, right? The crying mother. She supposedly they have precedent in native Mexico of such a story, but they also contend it back in Spain, something quite similar to it. Duendes largely came from the Spanish, and but that was largely embraced here in the Americas, right? That they're the third of the angels who couldn't make up their mind to side with God or Lucifer, and so they were turned into these trolls and try to get mischievous kids to do no good and so forth. And so you have that. You have El Baile de los Viejitos, right? The dance of the elderly, and oftentimes the baile zapateada is Spanish, like tap dancing and stringed instruments, and the percussions are Aztec. Okay, and so you have this blend. Okay, and then of course also dichos or sayings, right? And so they'd have lots of sayings. And I found it interesting. I don't know how many of the sayings that I was able to find in my books to put in there because a few of them I had Latino students who were familiar with them, who could literally finish my sentence with some of these sayings. Trying to find stuff here. I'm still on religion here. Okay, then the Baroque movement. Sorry. So some of the names, right? Luis de Góngora back in Spain. Viagra, right? Of course, the writer. Has anyone had the chance to read Don Quixote? Oh, it is something else. I had to under it was called the seminar classes where we had to read a certain number of classics from each era or epic, and it's something else. But he's likened, right, this delusional but noble and chivalric elderly man is goes on knight errands to help those who cannot protect themselves, and he supposedly is a symbol of the deterioration of the Spanish Empire. So here's a few of them. Remember, not all that shines is gold. Uh, God doesn't give wings to scorpions, for they would sting in flight. He who sows the wind will reap storms. A monkey dressed in silk is still a monkey. They sound better in Spanish. Ya va el burro otra vez al maíz, right? The burro's going back to the corn again. Someone who has a stupid habit and goes right back to it. And yeah. And then of course, another way by which Native American culture really took hold amongst Spaniards is brujeria, right? The brujas. Um, the we say witches literally to the translation to the English, but with the Spanish, right? The brujeria and brujas, that doesn't do justice. It's a lot more non-derogatory, right, in the Spanish. And so, like with it could come down to medicinal things. It could come down to el mal de ojo, the evil eye, and other things of such that I see it when I'm working on my Spanish and I'm watching a Spanish network. People contending, right, that you could call a certain number and talk to someone, and so they have astrology connected to it, and such, and then down to uh, home remedies for different types of sicknesses and different types of things that Catholics, like I said, like the evil eye phenomenon. Anybody have any stories or anything that with your family with any of this with the folklore?
I say for the evil eye because we have like a bracelet para mal ojo.
Hmm.
Basically, if someone like gives you bad presents or give you like bad sense, like it breaks and it shows like they have like evil intentions towards you.
Wow. Yeah, that,
Yeah, that's basically for us, like for the bracelets. Like, sabes, like los ojos.
uh-huh. Wow.
Yeah, that's basically the significance of when people wear those.
I was told also that when I did just a semester in Mexico, and I was told by someone, right, like when you see like a little niño, a little kid, and you're like, oh, what a beautiful child, that I was elbowed and told to tell them, may God take care of him after that, because that maybe perhaps I said it with envy, or maybe I had an inability to have a child, and you know what I mean, and that I wished them ill with having this healthy, beautiful child. And so it was very important that I say, may God take care of him after my compliment. I thought that was very interesting.
There's the same thing for if you like see a pregnant woman and you like have the urge to like touch their belly.
Uh-huh.
Basically, because one of my tías de México, de Sinaloa, me dijo,
Mm-hmm.
she was like, si hay una señora embarazada,
Mm-hmm.
a pregnant woman, and you have the urge to touch her belly, it's better if you do it and not have the urge. Because if you don't touch it, then it's basically giving bad como mal ojo a la señora,
Oh,
like
wow.
bad eye to her. Basically, it could cause like what's it called?
Miscarriage?
Consent, yeah, miscarriage.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
That's one thing she told me.
That's interesting. I didn't know that. So it actually then in Mexican culture, it's better to go ahead, even if you don't really know the woman. It's okay to go ahead and indulge and touch her
Well,
stomach.
for you have to ask first. You have to ask permission.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Pero es que es like mi tía
Uh-huh.
dice que tiene como un don. Like,
Oh,
do you know like a special like ability,
yeah.
ability? Basically un dono que like that she inherited. Basically, that she like sees like things.
Oh,
So
wow.
she told me like if she has the urge to touch the belly of a pregnant woman,
Hmm.
and if she doesn't do it, then it's gonna give a bad eye to the kid,
Oh,
and it's gonna
wow.
cause a miscarriage. That because she has like that kind of bone.
Wow, I'd never heard of
Yeah.
that word. That's fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, and I'd heard of the bracelets, right? Like with the what is it? One of them has like it's called the ojo del venado, like the
Mhm.
deer eye.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that it's so fascinating. I was only able to be in Mexico for one semester. I wish I would could have been there longer. It's Mexican culture is so fascinating. It really is. But as you guys see, right, this is indigenous and Spanish. Okay, this is todo está mezclado, right? It's all mixed up between the two. And you have the stereotype, right, with the kind of WASP 13 colonies, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, right? 13 colonies that there's almost an indifference toward Native Americans. There's a tendency to dispossess and just keep pushing them progressively westwardly out of the way. And there wasn't anywhere near the degree of intermarriage and having children with them and meshing their religion with them and their folklore and their literature. It's kind of out of the ordinary. It's kind of anomalous, the degree to which the Spanish mixed with the Native Americans. And of course, in academia, we consider that beautiful. We consider that wonderful. So at any rate, I'm sure I have something else here, but yeah, I have like the dances and the music and so forth. Um, And so saying at the end, right, that once again, that yes, the political story is a kind of a one-way thing. Um, but as far as culturally, behaviorally, institutionally, it was not a one-way street. The Native Americans had their say, had their influence with things. Another thing that really caught my attention in Mexico, if I may, is that I could go to the most humble um, little home, and they'd have a portrait or something that I thought was impressive in the house, and I would pay them a compliment. They would try to give it to me, and I would have to just insist, no, please, I don't want to take this from you. But the level of generosity was incredible. So, anybody else have any comments or questions about this, experiences, etc.? So, Yuritsa, that was you, right, hon? That was that shared?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Thank you very much. All right.
Bye-bye.
So, yeah,
Oh,
so go ahead.
no, it's because I was eating it. I was like, oh, you're welcome.
Huh. I know. It's funny some of the surprises you get. I have a hilarious French bulldog, and he was in my office just until moments before I got on. I thought, oh my goodness, wonder what he would do if I kept him in this room. But I'd rather not find out. So at any rate, so I hope you guys are doing well. I hope that you'll indulge me that I've just been so busy with just things. I have I've had a run over with not a run over. What would you call that? Is where in my U.S. history class, because I clearly love Spanish colonization so much, I put a lot of this in it. And so I've had students at a school or two whereby they've already had this stuff in their U.S. history class, and now they're taking the History 31, and I want to make it different. I want to add to what I have. So I literally, like with the El Inca Garcilaso de la Vega and this one with the mestizaje, with the mixing, I've just written these. So I'm writing new material. There is also I'm trying to apply. There's a job that opened up actually at our school that I'm trying to apply to as well. And so just kind of anomalous, out of the ordinary things whereby they're my excuses why I haven't graded a single thing yet of yours, and I apologize for that. So thank you for your patience. Okay. But
Good luck
Excuse
on your job.
thank you. I'm sorry, Armin.
it's good, it's good. I just wanted to ask, when do you think the grading would, happen? Just so we would have a date in our heads.
For sure. I'm if it's okay with you guys, I'm aiming for next week. This week is still just crazy all the way through the weekend. But next week I would love to finally dive into grading. Okay. I hope that's okay. So but yeah, you guys, I wish you well in your personal lives and in school, and I look forward to you guys. You guys are a great class. I love getting interaction back from you. And thank you so much for like I said, kind of acclimating at the last minute to a Tuesday rather than a Thursday. We'll be back to Thursdays after this, okay, at 4:30. But thank you so much. That's kind of what I had to share prior to the first test. So you guys take care, okay?
You
Bye.
too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
You two, just I have a quick question before
Sure.
everyone leaves. So, Professor Cowell, I am starting swim team next week, and I was going to tell you that I'm not going to be able to make these meetings due to timing. And I do remember that you said that under modules I could find the meetings, but so far I've looked a few times and I haven't seen any of the meeting recordings in there. I was wondering if.
That's right. And as I mentioned at the beginning of today's meeting, I don't know what was awry. They have not been recording properly. But I believe that I reached out and got some help, and I believe from here on out that that process is going to go much more swimmingly. So starting today, I plan to have this recorded and posted.
Thank you. That was very helpful.
Thank you. And thank you guys for your patience, okay?
Of course. Also, one more question, please.
Yeah.
When do you think that we're going to be tested on the upcoming test that you've been talking about?
Oh, it's the next it's our next endeavor. Yeah, this concludes the material, my coverage of the material for everything up to test one. But I plan to next Thursday. I'm trying to look and see. Let me take a look at your online schedule. Let's see here, Monday to 9 to Thursday to 12. Yes. So that should work out whereby, you know something? Oh, shoot. The Monday 2/9 to 2/12, our next meeting would be just after that. So you know what? I think I'm going to do a meeting again next Tuesday for your sake, so that we can, on the 10th, you'll still have 2 to 3 days to submit your test answers. I want to go through the study guide and the test itself with you guys on the next Zoom. Yeah, I definitely want to do that. You guys still there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're still.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I definitely want to do that. I want to give you guys time to kind of see. Like I'll literally put up the test and some of the questions and let you see my style of writing, etc. Right? And I want to do that and go over at least some of it, if not much of it, and to help you prepare to do well on it. Okay. So yeah, that means we're going to go ahead and do it on a Tuesday again next week. So it'll give you 2 extra days to do the test. All right.
Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate everything that you guys endure, and I wanna accommodate as best I can. I want you all to do very well. All right, so you guys take care, okay?
You too,
You
bye.
too, Professor Cowell. Have a great day.
Take care.